Do you want a table also? We can.
No, fine.
Okay.
Okay, I think we are ready. And we are going to start a session of Ask Me Anything. And we have two guests. So we have Igor, Minar, and Shmuela.
Hello.
And, we are going to be talking about, what do you think? We're going to talk about Angular. Or
maybe. It's Ask Me Anything,
yeah,
so we can be talking
ask
about
me
anything.
But I would point to Angular questions, no? Let's see what we got. So we are using Slido, and we were going to pick questions from there, and then we can also grab some questions from you. If you want to use Slido, you can point to this hash RC18, and feel free to add any questions, and then we will pick them from the top. So let's pick the first one, and you can read it here as well. Is rendering a lazy load module in a name route outlet possible? It seems that was a fixed core issue, but it's still not working for us with Angular 6.
Yeah, this is the issue that we fixed in 6. I don't know who the person is who asked this question, but maybe you can come to me afterwards and we can look into that particular issue.
We have the Aziz, so cool. It seems it's fixed now, so
okay.
Good news.
If we have a reproduction, then let's take a look at it afterwards.
Awesome. So let's take another one. Can you recommend a tool that can be integrated into a CI pipeline to check accessibility?
Yes. I'm blanking on the name right now. Sorry? Lighthouse can do some accessibility checks, but there's another tool that is much better at it. It starts with A and has X in it. It's a quiz.
Who knows?
Anybody?
Okay, it can be done.
It can be done. I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the name. But yes, there is a tool that you can build into a CI pipeline.
Oh yeah, totally. We will, if we find out, we will share it with everyone.
Okay.
So, another one out of the way. We are doing good progress. So far, all hits. So, Google can execute your GS code and index the render output, but what about other crawlers that are scraping your page? So this is more like CEO and indexing the content of your single-page applications.
So in my experience, Google is further along in this. I don't believe that Facebook and Twitter can do this. With these two, you can provide meta tags that can pick up text from your page, but I don't believe they are running JavaScript. Information about this stuff and its implementation is very scarce, but this is what I've seen in wild.
Actually, I was at DevFest Nantes, and there was a team member from the CEO Google team, and they have some new implementation that is covering some scenarios, improving that for Google. I'm not so sure about the other browsers, but it seems there's some new development on that.
From Google?
Yeah, from the kind of the indexing team.
Yeah, so this is what my talk was about. How can you build JavaScript and client-side JavaScript applications and get them indexed? So that's totally possible with Google, and ask.com has actually pretty good support as well. The other crawlers and search engines are not capable of doing that yet.
Okay, so let's take another question. How does the crawler know that the single-page application has finished loading?
Good question. I don't know the implementation details, but here's what I know. If you are running your own browser and you can start it with different flags, you can actually get information about what is happening in the browser. You can understand the queue of events and tasks that are being queued up by the application. So you can monitor and know when the application is done rendering or when it's ready for being interactive. Lighthouse already supports some of the metrics, so in a similar way, the crawler can know when the application is in the interactive state. And additional to that, I also know that there are resource constraints on how much time the crawler can spend trying to wait for your application to render. So there's some timeout. I don't know what the timeout is. I think it's in few seconds. Don't take me for the number, but it's like somewhere between 5 to 10 seconds, I would guess. And if your application is capable to finish rendering within that timeout, everything will be good. If you have a very slow application that loads a lot of JavaScript, or your JavaScript is very slow, or you're making a ton of requests to the backend, you might not make it within the timeout. So in that case, you're already providing a bad user experience, so you might reconsider how you're fetching the data or how you're bundling your application to make it more efficient.
Cool. I can see a pattern here. It's going to be you answering all the questions. So I'm going to make a question of my own, so we can see Shmuela answers. And I'm thinking that maybe some people don't know about ng-girls. Maybe you want to make a small intro so people can know about it.
Yeah, sure. So ng-girls is an organization where we introduce women into coding. So our main activity is full-day workshops. They're free for women, and they learn Angular with the help of volunteering mentors. We do this all around the world, and we start with an intro to Angular, and then there's a tutorial that it's on the web. You can also check it out, and they follow it during the day, again with the help of mentors who are there not just to answer questions, but also inspire and show more ideas and tools. So if you want to help us out, be a mentor, organize a workshop like that, or just contribute on Patreon, then we'll be very excited about this. So you can just talk to me about it.
Yeah, that's a really good project.
Thanks.
Okay, so let's move on to more questions from today, from the session from today. So do you already have some goal to achieve V8? I guess support.
Not the JavaScript VM V8, but in
V8. Okay.
Angular version 8.
I was thinking, yeah, you got it right.
Yes. Unofficially, we're trying really hard to land Ivy by the V8 timeline. The biggest question mark there is, can we upgrade all of the Google applications in time, and can we make sure that Ivy is backwards compatible fully with everything we have today, so we can roll it out at Google. And this is what we're doing right now, this month and probably until end of the year. The entire team is working on making sure that we're making Ivy backwards compatible, can run it against all of the application tests at Google and verify that everything's working properly. And if there are no surprises, then I think Ivy is going to be the biggest thing in V8. In addition to that, we have some enhancements prepared, but those are currently on the back burner until Ivy is done.
Yeah, I know that there's a lot of people really excited about Ivy. And what would be the main benefits from moving in the tests that you have done, and maybe some user tests?
The biggest benefit of Ivy, right? Is that what you're asking?
Yes, that's it.
So the reason why Project Ivy exists, and for those of you who don't know, Ivy is about rewriting the entire renderer of Angular and doing it in a different style so that we can do several things. One of them is generate less code so that the application is smaller, generate code in a different way where we're actually able to code split Angular renderer itself. Right now, the render is very monolithic, so even if you use just one out of the 1,000 features, you pay for all these features. With Ivy, you will only pay for what you're using, so we'll be able to tree shake any features that are not being used. And additionally, there's a lot of focus on making sure that we can better scale builds by having this locality. It's a property that allows us to compile the template without looking at the rest of the application. So if you have an application that has 1 million components and only one changes, all we need to do is to recompile that one component and nothing else.
So that also fits really well with lazy loading. Is it related, or?
Locality itself is not, but the way we generate code will simplify your lazy loading. You'll be able, the code itself is not going to be in separate classes as it is today. It will be actually part of the original component class, which means that you no longer need to deal with factories as you have today. Unless it's hidden behind the CLI, but even within CLI, factories will not be there. You will be just having references to components, and code splitting and all the tooling will become much simpler. Additionally, because the generated code is much more readable, it's going to be much easier to place breakpoints and stop the application as it's running in a way that you can debug it and understand what Angular is doing at the time.
So the developer experience is also going to improve,
yeah,
as a side effect. Cool. Well, we had some questions also related to the same conversation. Let's pick the next one. What has better performance with rendering dynamic components, comparing Angular versus React?
Angular.
If you know that one.
No. I actually don't know. I don't know about React, but I think in Angular the performance is pretty great, and like you said, with Ivy there's gonna be even more improvements with that. But if you have experience with React, I think it shouldn't be something very.
I wonder if there is some particular angle for this question, because in general there's no big difference in performance of dynamically rendered components in Angular and React, but maybe there is more to the question than what's being asked here. Can we get a clarification on this, or I'm not sure who asked the question.
We don't have the owner, the author. I guess in my mind, probably the actual parsing of the template, depending how big is the template for that dynamic component, it could be an issue. But it will be the same for both.
But the templates don't exist, that all of that has been processed in both Angular and React by the time you're loading a dynamic component.
So that can be a big difference. Okay, well, we leave it open. No problem. Can we load components not known at development time? Well, this is pointing to these dynamic components that we were talking about. So maybe, so we can pick up these components that were statically generated and then somehow load them faster, or
yeah.
It's kind of a different strategy.
I think this is the topic.
Yeah, we were talking about this, and so this was like an idea that I had in several projects that we had. So basically, you can do that, but it's best to wrap it with as a web component. It will be very difficult to add it, to integrate it really into the Angular project, and if the versions that you're using in your main Angular project, if the version changes, if you update the version, then you also need to update the version of the components that you're going to use. So that's a bit of a problem if it's an Angular component. So basically use Angular elements to build it as a web component to do this. But we also raised some other issues that you really need to trust this source that generates the components for you, because you're letting your users use code that you didn't write by yourself. So there might be some security issues there, vulnerabilities. So I guess you should know better what you let your users have as part of your web application. Now, there are different methods to really add plugins to your website for your web application that really separate the plugin from the application code and gives it a very specific API, and you wrap it with, we're talking about iframes and other methods that you might use. So it's much more complex to do this. Just take this into consideration.
I think it really depends on the use cases. If you control all the code, then the security issues are not a problem. And if you control the versions, then also versioning is not a problem, and you can totally do this. But if you want something really robust, and especially if the code is authored by other parties, then there are many different things that need to consider. And creating a self-encapsulating component in the form of web component using Angular element is probably the best choice.
Okay, I think we have answered that one. This one is going to be a little bit more interesting. So what's your take on Vue.js CLI, which it's close to the CLI that was released by NRX, I think?
The CLI tool for Vue?
No, that's a different CLI, but there's an Angular CLI that was recently released by NRX team.
A CLI tool that was released by the NGRX?
No NGRX, but the Narwhal team.
Narwhal, NX.
Oh, NX.
Yeah. Okay.
So NX is just the extension of the Angular CLI, right? Vue has its own CLI tool. I don't know how all of the features compare, but Evan's doing awesome work with Vue, and it's interesting how all of the main players in the market realize that providing tooling and abstracting away from the hands of users has so many benefits, because it's so easy to get the build set up wrong. So if you have a tool that can give you the right optimizations and fine-tune things for your application, then you just save a lot of headaches to developers. So it's not surprising to me that Vue has a CLI.
Yeah, it's interesting to see. I guess the first CLI was from Ember. And then it kind of spread, and I mean, good ideas, they will stay.
Yeah. There was Ember, there was Yeoman, if you remember, a long time ago, which was trying to be agnostic, but that's very difficult when you're trying to serve everybody, you don't really serve anybody. And now, yeah, most of the frameworks and libraries have their own CLIs that are specific to that. One thing that I like that Vue's CLI is doing is that it has the UI, which our CLI also has in the form of Angular console. So Angular console is built on top of a CLI and gives you the user interface where you can debug things, understand the structure of your project, and run tasks. And currently we're working on exposing logs as well, so that if your application and build system is producing lots of logs, they're much easier to navigate and understand if you have UI extension and UI representation of that.
Yeah, there's also a nice integration between the different tooling around Angular that I can see also with schematics and CLI, and all they are working together, to achieve this better developer experience. Also nice when there's a new developer joining, maybe a team, they get all of this tooling that will support a nice, like a welcome package, something like this. And then it can also integrate with different, methodologies that may not be Angular CLI, but some spin-off of Angular CLI templates, which is quite interesting.
Yeah, one of the things we are trying to do with the CLI is not try to solve all the problems, but provide extension points so that the community can build additional add-ons. And those are built in the form of schematics. So there are different teams out there that have built schematics that extend functionality within your project by providing native script, for example, integration, other integrations where we bring material design components and scaffold things for you. All of these can be done outside of the CLI core, and this enables the community to contribute more features, more extensions, more functionality.
Yeah, it's really good work, I might say.
Thanks.
So here we can point to the next question. Oh, that's a nice one. So what do you think about Angular's future? I mean, who wants to take this one?
Let's have Shmuela ask.
Okay. Angular's future is great, is awesome. It keeps developing, and the Angular team is amazing with bringing us, not only Igor, also the other guys. They're really trying to give the developers the best experience that they can give, and to always use cutting-edge technologies to make us developers happy and to make our users happy. So that's why they're spending a lot of time rebuilding and testing the compiler and renderer with Ivy and giving us all these additional tools. I think that it makes it really easy and trusty to work with. You start an Angular project and you know that it's going to work well. And also you have a very strong community that contributes to it and also reports to the team about any issues or bugs and things that we would like to have. Having this support in the community, I think, is very important. And Angular is structured, especially with the CLI and other tools. It's very opinionated on how you have to write your code and structure your project. And we mentioned NX by Narwhal that also gives you the structure of multi. Do you call it?
Monorepo?
Monorepo, yeah, for several projects. It's especially great. Well, it's great both for big companies that have to manage different teams that work on several projects that somehow rely on each other, and also for small teams, small projects that you're just prototyping or wanna develop something really quickly. And it just works. It works really easily. So that's why I really believe that Angular is gonna stick for a long time.
Cool. You have you want to say your?
Well, for me, the future of Angular is really in Ivy right now. Once Ivy is done, that will unleash a new wave of things that we want to do in Angular. But we need to get to the milestone where Ivy is fully rolled out, everybody's using it. And then there are quite a few exciting things that we are planning that we would like to get done. But Ivy needs to come first.
No, that sounds great. I think we can take one last question and then we can do like a wrap up. So what's the way to dynamically render UI by using a JSON schema? And then a follow up is AngularJS.
Yeah.
In AngularJS we use, okay, so previously we used JSON form to do that. Is there any library to use a similar approach with Angular current version?
Yeah.
There isn't. Well, you can, I don't...
There is something.
There is something, but it's build time. I think the question is like, could we do it at a runtime?
At runtime.
Yeah. So at build time, you can totally do it. You can pull in a schema, you can generate a template, and then have it processed by Angular. With Ivy, however, we'll be able to do the same thing at runtime. And this is like one of the cool things that Ivy will enable. So
yeah, I think this is a very popular use case for companies that they deal with a lot of form-driven kind of features. I mean, this is excellent. They can store this data in JSON format and then bring it as they need it.
I'm trying to remember the name of the library that allows you to do this well, like to use it not dynamically, but do you remember? So there was a talk by Yuri Stromfloner in NG Talks. You can find it on YouTube. And he was showing this library. I just don't remember its name. I know there was formerly for AngularJS. And
Oh yeah, I remember formally.
So there's something similar for Angular.
So there's probably one library that covers this, so it just needs a little bit of research. Well,
yeah.
thanks a lot. I don't know if you want to add anything, just final words.
Just thank you for a warm welcome. It's great to be in Central Europe, and thanks everybody for coming.
Okay, so you want to reach them just after this session, feel free to do so. They are really nice people. You can talk to them. And yeah, as he was saying, like, thank you for joining this session, and we will stick for the last bit of the conference. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.